Thank you to everybody that came today. I hope that what I can share with you will be an encouragement as I talk about how God has been using me and my family lately. Thank you also to Pastor Fickett and the Missions Committee for offering me this time and allowing me the opportunity to share with you how God has been moving and changing lives in another part of the world. I should start with an introduction. I think most of you know who I am, and you know my family, but there's our picture up on the wall. I am Francis Sims, and I'm currently serving full-time in Kigali, Rwanda, at a Christian school called Kigali International Community School, which I'll just refer to as KICS, K-I-C-S, from here out. So if you hear me say KICS, I'm talking about Kigali International Community School, the school that I work at. So I serve there as a PE teacher for the elementary school side of the school. So I teach from pre-kindergarten up through 5th grade. I am married to Audrey, and we have 2 kids you can see up there. Chloe is there on the left. She'll be 4 in November, and Caleb just turned 1. I'm also really fortunate to have a co-worker with me from the school. Jeff is here with me. He's a Rwandan who also teaches PE and health at KICS, but he teaches the older kids. He teaches middle school and high school. This is Jeff's first time in America, so if you see him after the service, I'm sure he'd love to tell you how he's experiencing it so far. Jeff is also married. He has a wife and 2 kids who are about the same age as Chloe and Caleb, and he'll be coming up to share a little bit later on. Before I get into my speech, I wanted to start by giving this congregation another big thank you. As I'm sure many of you remember, at the start of this past school year, Audrey and I were looking to purchase a vehicle. This was something that was going to be especially helpful for Audrey. As our first year in Kigali, we were only able to travel using the school car if no other teachers were using it. This was really hard for Audrey, especially because the school car couldn't be used during school hours, so it meant that for the most part she was stuck at home during the day, and then even in the evening we could only get out if the car was available. And so we asked our supporters to give us money to help us purchase this car, to support us in that way. And I'm happy to share with you that we were able to purchase a car last year, and it was in large part because of the efforts that people in this congregation supported us. And we wouldn't have been able to purchase the car without your support. So thank you for that. And God is good, and God is using you to make a difference in Kigali through us. And so we're just so thankful for that. We wanted to start off with that thank you. Now, as many of you know, Audrey and I, you've known us for a while, so I won't give too much background information today. But I think it's enough to remind you that we are, again, like I said, serving God in Kigali, Rwanda, which is where I was offered a job to work at KICS as the elementary PE teacher. Speaking of teaching is what I'm good at. I'm not really good at public speaking. It's not my forte, but I like to teach. So we'll start today with a pop quiz. Teachers like pop quizzes. Some of you maybe haven't had pop quizzes in a while, but I'm going to start with a pop quiz to see how many of you remember where Rwanda is. So we'll start with an easy question. I've got a map up here on the screen, and you can see I broke it up into 6 sections. These aren't official sections, but let me just see with your fingers which section do you think Rwanda would be found in. So go ahead, put your fingers up, a 1, a 2, a 6. I know you don't have 6 fingers on one hand, so if you think that's the answer, get creative. I see a lot of 5s. Are we waving, or is that okay? So 5's the answer. That's good, and you're right. Rwanda is in the continent of Africa, and so that would be, if you want to tell your friends about this great guy that was talking at church, and you say, yeah, he works in Rwanda, that would be, if you want to show them where I work, that would be where you start Africa. But the quiz gets harder from here, because Africa itself is broken up into 5 major regions. You all know Northeast, Southwest, and that pink one in the middle is the central region. So how many of you think you know where Rwanda is on the continent of Africa? Let me see a hands raised. We'll start at the top and we'll work our way down. The northern region, the bright pink region. How many people think Rwanda is in the northern region? Not many. Okay, how about the yellow one, the western region? Nobody. Okay. I expect everybody to answer, so let's be a good students here. How about the salmon color, that paler pink, Central Africa? How many think Rwanda is there in Central Africa? Okay, I'm seeing some hands. Good. Seeing some hands there in Central Africa. How about that? I'm partially colorblind, so forgive me if I get the colors wrong. It looks kind of blue to me on the East Africa. How many think East Africa? Rwanda is in East Africa. Okay, we've got quite a few hands here. What about Southern Africa? How many people would put Rwanda in Southern Africa? Okay, well, most of you said Eastern Africa, and you would be correct. Rwanda is in East Africa. And if we get a little bit closer, you can see some other countries that most people are a little bit more familiar with. Rwanda has Uganda to its north. It has the Democratic Republic of Congo to its west. You can see Tanzania there to the east, and it's got Burundi to the south. And so Rwanda's right there, and as I'm sure you'll all go home and want to tell people about what I said today, now you know how to get people to Rwanda if you want to show them on a map. You could probably also take out your smartphone and just punch in Rwanda, but who knows, maybe you have a globe or a map at your house, and it's always good to know where people are when they're sharing about other places in the world. So Rwanda is really small. You can't really tell from this picture, but Rwanda is small enough that it could actually fit inside Pennsylvania 4 times. And I shared that last year, but it's kind of a fun fact as you think about, the different sizes of different countries. Rwanda is really small. From the capital city, which you can see there, Kigali, the big black dot, you can get almost anywhere else in the country in less than 4 hours. So it's very different than even trying to get up to Pittsburgh in the same state. But that's where I work. So that's where Rwanda is. Now, I want to remind you a little bit about the school that I'm teaching at. I'm teaching at a school called KICS, like I said, Kigali International Community School, and it's a private Christian school in Kigali, which is the capital city of Rwanda. Kigali was started in 2005 and was originally created as a school that would meet the needs of American missionary families who were in the country. By 2008, though, the school had over 200 students. Some were still missionary kids, but that group was now the minority, with more than half of the students being from local Rwandan families now, and the rest coming from families who were in the country for other business or political reasons. Despite the student demographic changing, the core vision of KICS has remained pretty much the same as it was from the start. The mission of KICS is to provide a Christ-centered, U.S.-accredited primary and secondary education that challenges students to excel academically and live out a biblical worldview. Their vision is to impact the world for Christ by preparing student leaders who choose character before career, wisdom beyond scholarship, service above self, and a lifestyle of participation over apathy. Now, what I think is so special about the KICS mission and vision is that it isn't just the kind of thing that gets written up in a manual or posted on a website and then forgotten about or rarely talked about. Every classroom has this mission and vision that you see up on the board, framed and put up on their wall. And it's hard to get through any staff training without some aspect of the mission or vision of KICS being talked about or discussed or clarified. I always feel a little funny coming to America and talking about the school's mission and vision because I think most parents or students, even teachers, wouldn't be able to tell you what the mission or vision is of their school. I was in the Penridge School District for 13 years, and I couldn't tell you a thing about what their mission or vision is. But everything that happens at KICS is really based around that mission and vision, trying to be a school that will not just help kids excel academically, but also learn to live out a biblical worldview. So my experience teaching at KICS has been amazing over the past 2 years, and although next year is the last year on my current contract with the school, I have every intention of renewing that contract. In fact, my love for KICS and my desire to stay in Kigali long term is what led Audrey and I to partnering with our current sending agency, Be to the World. I want to talk about Be to the World a little bit because this is something exciting that has happened since last summer when I was here giving an update. Last summer, Audrey and I were still working through the Brethren in Christ World Missions Missionary Development Program, or the MDP. We were working through the MDP in the hopes of becoming full-time missionaries with Brethren in Christ World Missions. Even though it wasn't clear to us if we could connect our work in Kigali to the Brethren in Christ World Missions mission and vision, we wanted to keep our options open at that time. Now, after continuing with the MDP for a few months this past school year, Audrey and I, along with the Brethren in Christ World Missions Office, we all decided that the connection just wasn't there. So instead of continuing with the MDP and ultimately becoming full-time missionaries with the Brethren in Christ World Missions, we would instead need to find a different sending agency, and we would partner with Brethren in Christ World Missions as associate missionaries. So we are still partnered with Brethren in Christ World Missions, but we are partnered as associate missionaries, not as full-time missionaries through them. This was a hard decision for us because both of us love Brethren in Christ World Missions. I grew up going to Roxbury, hearing Brethren in Christ World missionaries talking, sharing about how God was using them and the great things that they were doing for Him and for this denomination. But ultimately, we ended up needing to look into other missions agencies that would be able to partner with us and specifically had a heart for missions through education. The sending agency that we ultimately landed on was an agency that was started recently by the KIC's director and his wife, an agency called Be to the World. The vision of Be to the World, I don't know if you can see that up there, but I'll read it for you. The vision of Be to the World is to bless children, parents, and communities in countries that are recovering from war through transformative educational institutions. And that's exactly what KICS is, and that's how we got partnered up with them. It has been a real blessing to find a Christian partner organization and somebody that has a strong emphasis on bringing change through education and the gospel. Be to the World, while I'm sharing about who they are and what they're doing and how we're involved with them, is currently working on 3 different projects. The first is the one that I'm involved in. That's what they call their Rwanda project. It's the partnership that is based around partnering with KICS, the school that I'm at, and helping it to grow into a school that can make generational impact on Rwanda. Their second project is called the Pakistan Project. And that project is based around raising money to sponsor Christian students who are living in Pakistan so that they can go to college. I didn't know this, but Pakistan is a very difficult place for Christians to be right now. And it's especially hard for Christian families to get jobs that would pay well enough for them to be able to send their kids to college. And so this partnership that Be to the World has with a Christian school in Pakistan is enabling kids to be able to go to college and continue their education. The third thing that Be to the World is doing right now is something called the Global Educators Gathering, and this is something that is providing training and encouragement to staff from other schools that are using Christian education to bring change to healing countries who are recovering from war or other tragedies. In light of Be to the World's vision to bless communities that are recovering from war through education, I'm actually going to ask my coworker Jeff to come up and expand a little bit on the recent history of Rwanda and his perspective on how KICS and Be to the World can make a difference there.
Good morning. I apologize because you're going to listen to a strange accent and strange English with no PowerPoint. So I assume since this is your language that you are grasping what I mean, right? Right. Thank you. So as my friend, actually he's my coworker, but he's also one of my best friends. So far as an American guy, he's been very good and very nice to me, and then I take him as my very first friend. So as he said, Rwanda is in East Africa and is one of the 6 countries that makes East African Community. So that's Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. You said Tanzania, but I said Tanzania and South Sudan. So, yeah, I want to share a little bit about Rwandan history. If you want to better understand the history of Rwanda, you divide Rwandan history in 4 parts. So we have before the colonists or colonialists, we have during colonists, we have after independence, which is 1962, and after liberation, which is July 4th, 1994. And just as a little background, before the colonists came to Rwanda, Rwandans used to be Rwandans. You could meet a person and you say, hey, where are you coming from? I'm coming from Rwanda and I'm Rwandan. So during the colonialists, these changed. And we've been under Belgium and German first and then Belgium. And then they changed one thing that changed the entire life of Rwandans. So they, I don't know why they did it, but you'll get it through me. I'm not here to point fingers like they did this because they wanted this to happen, but they made social groups from Rwandans. So basing on the living. So if you had 100 cows or more, you were put in a category called Tutsis. And then if you had less than 100 and you live mostly of farming and other cheap, like if you have cheaper life than Tutsis, you were called Hutus, a Hutu. And then if your lifestyle was, if you survived by hunting, chasing animals to find meat, how to eat, and then you're in another third category that is called Twa. So we have Tutsi, Hutu, and Twa. I'm sure if you've heard of Rwanda, you know something like Tutsi. Who knows, who've had Tutsi before? I know, you've read, so you know what Tutsi is. And so during that time, I say the second part, they tried to make that and put that identification on ID of every Rwandan. So if you're Tutsi, you're holding an ID that you are Tutsi. And then if you're Hutu, you have it. If you're Twa, you have it. And that was nice. I don't know if that was, I know the idea behind making that, but it, before the colonists, during the colonists, they just had Tutsis on power every term, and then the Hutu never get a chance to lead. And after independence in 1st of July 1992, the colonists, of course, were not leading much, and then they had to put Hutus on power. And then they say, hey, you guys, you know, Tutsis has been leaders for so long, now you can come and take over. Even though we're not the one leading, but we're under you, we'll be telling you what to do. And then Hutu took over. As Hutu took over those time, and then they wanted revenge. Like the Tutsis, you've been there for so long, now it's time for Hutu. Not Tutsi were allowed to go to school formally, like Hutu want to take over everything and be on top. Twa was very down low, they couldn't fight to take power. And then after that, Tutsis were not happy because they were rich and were highly they were privileged, and like, oh, you cannot take over this way. And then they tried to fight for their power, and then it couldn't work. And then Hutu, because on the lead, they gave Tutsis 24 hours to leave the country. So the first move of Tutsi happened in 1959, before even independence, because they were there. It was like a fight, civil war, no one is on. And then some Tutsis went fled to Uganda, neighboring countries, as I mentioned, and then that was 1959. And after that, during independence, people, the Hutu leaders, tried to change identification by the way they wanted it to be. Like, I know you are Tutsi, you're rich, then you're Tutsi, you deserve something. And then they moved to targeting people. And then they made IDs of the people they wanted to kill. And then that was a plan. They had Tutsis. Now people in Rwandans started to fear. Like, if I'm Tutsi or if I'm Hutu, then we're not friends. So they started making those barriers of Tutsis not sitting with Hutus, not sharing, like those things. Started to occur during that time. And on the other side, because refugees are all around Rwanda, a neighboring country, they formed a party called Rwanda Patriotic Army. And then they were based in Uganda. And they started thinking how they can liberate the country from those segregation and then be the way they can be back to Rwanda. And then as those plans were going on, so the crash of President Habyarimana on 7th of April 1994 happened, and then the inauguration of Hutu killing Tutsi started right away, because he was the one pushing and not to start killing Tutsi right away. After his death, then Hutu started killing. So about 1 million of Rwandans, Tutsi, were killed in less than 100 days. If you can do math, you can see how many people were being killed every day. And Rwanda becomes a home of widows, widowers, orphans, hopeless people, including me, and for no reason. So, as I said, this started, the official killing of Tutsis started 7th of April 1994. And then the army, RPF, as I said, Rwanda Patriotic Army from Uganda, knew and was informed that what that was happening. And then they were forced to enter the country from Uganda and try to stop the killing. It didn't happen right away. They made it. They made it first attempt. They were pushed back, and then the second, and the third, and then they made it on 4th of July 1994, which is Liberation Day. And then on that day, that's the day we take as liberation of Rwanda. It's not Independence Day because it happened before, but it's liberation of Rwanda. And then they stopped genocide, and then they burned the social IDs from Rwanda, and everyone was called in, refugees were called back to Rwanda and to see and to live as Rwandans. From that time on, no Rwandans Tutsi, no Rwandans Hutu. If you come to visit Rwanda and like, hey, are you Hutu or Tutsi? We just tell it to you, and if you're different color, then we say, hey, are you Belgian? You want to bring that back? So it's not a good thing to do and to ask if you're in Rwanda. So from that point, people had to sit in their village for court, for judgment. We didn't need judges and other professional lawyers to come and sit and make those. People had to sit in their village, 10 houses together, and then make judgment. If they saw you, or if you accept that you have been part of genocide, you are subject to court for 15 to 20 years. So this year we commemorate the 25th of genocide commemoration. So meaning that most of those people who killed are back home in a society. And we're living together as Rwandans, forgiveness from the bottom heart, we forgave them. I remember, this is what I wanted to share with you. I made visit because by the time the genocide happened, I was 10, and I saw people dying, and I saw people being killed, and I didn't know why, because I couldn't understand why people are killing each other. I know your house is next to our house, and you come in and you're killing my father. What did my father do? I couldn't understand. And then the only thing I could see after that, as I was walking out, is to see dead people only. Dead bodies, and yeah. That's what I could see. And then it took time for me to understand what happened. So I had to go visit people from jail, and I asked why they will do what they did. And one of the things that remained in me as they were answering is that, I don't know, under the operation of leaders, we just did this, and then it happened. Did you think you were doing the right thing? It's like, I don't know. Did you go to school? No. And then it's like, these people were not, have not received a good education. So having, when President Kagame, that's the Rwandan president, came to the United States back in 2001, and then I don't know how he made it, but he met with the president of the United States, and then he asked if we could have an American school in Rwanda. So that's when KICS was brought. And then it started in 2005, and then it's a Christian school. So having KICS in Rwanda that has the weird history, and then teaching these values, serving, being a servant, service above self, lifestyle, but thinking of other people before yourself. I think it's a good opportunity for Rwandans, young generation, to receive a good education that will help Rwanda in the future as good servants and good Christians. Thank you very much. If you have a question, you can ask me anytime. That's what I had to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So you heard a little bit about the history of Rwanda and just the terrible tragedy that happened in their country in 1994, and how a big part of it was due to a lack of education. The people in the country, they didn't excel in critical thinking. They didn't excel in knowing how to think for themselves, and the government told them to do something, and all they knew was to do it. And being at a school like KICS that is teaching kids how to think critically, that's teaching kids biblical values about how important people are and how to treat one another, and it doesn't matter if you're Jew or Gentile, male or female. There are no social classes in the kingdom of God. And being at a school like KICS, I really believe, is allowing me to make a huge impact on the future. Especially as Jeff said, it's a time in the country where even the people who have been put in jail for committing these terrible crimes, the genocide, are back in society. And so how is the country going to deal with that without having the heart of Christ, without being able to forgive, without being able to look for reconciliation? And so I really do see my opportunity to be at KICS as a huge blessing, and I see the school of KICS and the work that Beat to the World is doing as really important. And John mentioned it earlier. If you care about the future, you invest in kids. You invest as a teacher. And I care about the future of Rwanda. I care about those people. I care about the kids at my school, and that's why I'm there. So I want to wrap up my talk this morning by sharing a little bit about some specific things that Audrey and I have been doing in Kigali, Rwanda. And I'll start with myself. As I said earlier, the reason we ended up in Kigali in the first place was because I accepted a job offer to teach PE at KIX. And what started as a simple elementary PE job soon turned into a plethora of opportunities to invest in the work that was being done at the school. Of course, I'll start though by talking about PE. When I decided I wanted to teach PE, I didn't have a clue how I was going to combine that choice with a desire to serve God cross-culturally. I went to college to get a degree in health and physical education, and I didn't know what the connection was going to be. I always knew I wanted to be involved in missions. I always knew I wanted to find a way to serve God cross-culturally, but I didn't know what that was going to look like. And it became very clear to me that this opportunity at KIX was how I would do that. And over the past 2 years, God has really been helping me learn how to make the best out of the time I have with my kids, even just in PE class. For example, when you think about something like good sportsmanship, something I would be teaching my kids, that whether it's how you treat your opponents or how you treat your own teammates, that's a perfect opportunity, I've found, to talk to my kids about how the Bible says we should love our enemies, how we should be praying even for people who persecute us. When I talk to my students about how to deal with the pain and frustration of not always being a winner, but sometimes being a loser, I get to remind my kids that the Bible tells us that we can cast all of our anxieties on God because He cares about us. And when kids aren't getting along with each other, or maybe they're just having a particularly fussy day, I can remind them about Philippians 2:14 that encourages us to do everything without complaining or arguing. In fact, each month I help the kids memorize a new Bible verse while they're catching their breath between different activities. I include verses about motivating themselves to do their best, being honest, how to respond when somebody falsely accuses you of something, relying on God to meet their needs, not being selfish, and more. Now, you might be tempted to think that these elementary school kids probably think it's pretty lame to be wasting time in PE memorizing Bible verses. And I was tempted to think that even myself when I started doing it. But I've heard so much positive feedback from the kids, and even from their parents and from teachers, about how these kids are applying the verses that we talk about in PE to their lives and what they're doing outside of PE, that I've learned that it's really time well spent. In fact, I shared with you just last year when I was here about one of my students coming up to me after getting to experience a PE class led by a team of college students from Virginia Tech. And he said he had a great time in his class, but he was disappointed they didn't talk to him about a Bible verse. This was something I couldn't believe. I couldn't believe that a kid would come to me and say, yeah, I had these college kids from America teaching me how to play these different games, and it was fun, but they didn't tell me about a Bible verse, and I was really disappointed to hear that. That blew me away. I couldn't believe it. Earlier that year, I also had a parent come up to me after somebody had broken into their car and stolen some things from their family. She told me that she was really upset, and I think rightfully so, about what had happened. But her son told her that Mr. Sims was talking to his class about forgiveness, and how I had told him that you don't have to wait for somebody to apologize before you can forgive them. Well, he told his mom that he wanted to forgive whoever had done that, even if they never came back and apologized. This year I had another experience that stood out to me. The last Bible verse we talk about each year is 2 John 1:8, which says, "Watch yourselves so you don't lose what we have worked for, but may win a full reward." And we've been talking in class about the importance of finishing things well, not just on our spiritual journey, but also other things like sporting events or the school year. Well, a teacher came up to me and thanked me for talking to the kids about this verse. He told me how a lot of the kids hadn't been trying very hard on an assignment that he had started to lecture them about the importance of working hard, even though it was the end of the school year. And he was talking to them about how they needed to finish the year well. And he said when he said that, one of his students stood up, a girl stood up, and she said, "Mr. Sims is telling us about this in PE." And soon the whole class was reciting the Bible verse that we were talking about in PE. Watch yourselves so you don't lose what we have worked for, but may win a full reward. And this teacher told me, he said, once they had been talking about the verse and remembering it, they made the connection and they realized why their efforts on that project weren't good enough. It's my prayer that the impact I can make on these kids at Kicks can leave an everlasting mark on them, a mark that will set them apart, as many of them someday go back to the more than 25 countries that they came from before their life circumstances landed them and their family in Kigali for a time. I really do believe Kicks has positioned itself to be a school that enables kids to impact the world for Christ. And it's amazing that I get to play a small role in that as their PE teacher. Now, aside from teaching PE for grades pre-K through 5, Kicks has also asked me to be the director of the after-school activities for the elementary side of school. This was something that I didn't feel at all prepared for when I arrived in Kigali. But I found that just like God helped Gideon, Moses, and many others before me who felt unqualified or incapable, God could help me do that job well. And I've gotten to be a blessing to kids and parents who want to be involved in everything from basketball to taekwondo to Rwandan traditional dance. I've also been able to invest in Kicks by helping to give reading proficiency tests to kids in kindergarten and grade 1, by helping to run the gifted and talented program for grades 3 through 5, and even being the school's P.O. Box mail pickup person. And perhaps one of the stranger things I've done is somehow they managed to rope me into helping with multiple music concerts, playing guitar, playing drums, playing the xylophone. I've been able to invest. But perhaps the way that I am most surprised I got to invest this past year was by being a 5th grade classroom teacher. Yes, you heard that right. They asked me to teach a half day of 5th grade. And you didn't miss the part of my talk last year where I said that was something I was planning to do, where I had training to do, or I was looking forward to do. But I did have a minor I did have training in working with elementary school kids, and it's what I had been doing at the school. And so when the school found themselves in a position where their 5th grade teacher had to leave at Christmas, they called on me to fill in part-time. I wasn't sure if I even had the time to take it on, but after shifting some of my responsibilities around, I was able to fit it into my current schedule while still being fully available to teach all of my PE classes. It was not at all what I thought God had in store for me this past year. But even though it wasn't easy, I could clearly sense God's guidance and empowerment allowing me to be successful in it and to make sure that the kids got what they needed out of the second half of their school year. As for my wife, as I mentioned, and we've talked about this before, Audrey feels very strongly that God has called her to be a nurse and to use that training to bless people in need. This past year, we were able to rejoice with her that she was able to apply for and receive a license to practice nursing in Rwanda. Although she has not found a way to utilize her license yet, she has the sense that God may be calling her to volunteer at a local birthing clinic, the same one, in fact, that we delivered our son Caleb at last year. Speaking of our kids, Audrey is currently spending her time as a full-time, God-fearing mother who is committed to investing into the lives of our kids. And as many of you know, being a mom really is a full-time job. But that hasn't stopped her from finding other ways to invest in the community. Audrey attends a ministry group at our church for parents with young children called MOPS. She also takes part in a weekly prayer gathering for women in the community. And Audrey plans to keep on doing those things while also looking for even more opportunities to invest in the local community, both as a mom and as a nurse. So, I hope that I've conveyed that Audrey and I are both excited about continuing our ministry in Kigali, Rwanda, not just next year, but for many years to come. God has been using both of us in ways we expected, but also ways that we didn't expect to impact the lives of children and adults in Kigali. Audrey and I consider ourselves blessed to have been given this opportunity to serve God in the ways that I've shared about. If something about what I shared stirred something up in you as well, I'd love to talk a little bit about how you can learn more or partner with us in our ministry. So, the first thing I want to tell you about is our monthly, or at least it's supposed to be monthly, newsletter. If you enjoyed hearing about what we've been up to over the past 2 years, you'll probably love the newsletters that we send out, giving more details about our work and also our family life. If you want to get onto our mailing list and get the newsletter, simply put your name and email address or physical address if you don't have access to email on the form, which you can find just down the stairs at the information table. And you'll be able to get regular updates about our ministry and the ways that God is moving in Kix and around Kigali. If you are already getting our newsletter, there's no need to re-sign up, but if you haven't been getting it, this would be a great opportunity for you to stay engaged with us and get to know what we're doing. The next way you can partner with us is through supporting the work we do with Me to the World financially. The unfortunate reality of our current situation is that even though we're on the field, we don't have enough financial partners to meet the needs of our budget. If God leads you to, you could support our ministry with a one-time gift, or you could become part of our financial support team by committing to give to our work on a regular basis. If you think God may be calling you to support us financially, but you want more time to think about it, or you want to talk to me about it more in person, please fill out the form again that is down the stairs at the information table, and there's a box there marked "I'd like a call." I would love to follow up with you if you have any questions about how you can partner with us in that way, or if you just want to have me call after you've had a chance to go home, pray about it, talk to your family about it. Lastly, you can, and I hope many of you will, choose to partner with us through prayer. I have put our most current prayer card down in the same spot there at the information table, next to our newsletter sign-up sheet. Now, the card has a picture of my family, the one that you saw earlier, and you can put it somewhere in your Bible or on your fridge to remind you to pray for us regularly. It was really encouraging to come here and hear that some of you have our old prayer card and are praying for us on a regular basis. If you already have our old card, take our new one. You can get an idea of what our family looks like this year, and I just pray that you would continue to be praying for us. Speaking of prayer, I wanted to wrap up today by sharing a couple ways that you can partner with us in prayer, some specific prayer needs that we have. The first, as I mentioned, is for financial partners. Pray that God will bring financial partners alongside of us who will help us get our ministry fully funded, and that in that way we'll be able to stay in the field confidently for a long time. Pray for the projects that Be to the World is working on, not just the Rwanda project, but also the Pakistan project and the global education gathering. Pray for Kix as they start the process of planning a new building, a new campus. Last year, many of you remember, we asked for prayer that Kix would find a piece of land that they could expand onto, and that prayer was answered. And so now we need to start thinking about how that land is going to be utilized to best serve the community and bless even more students going into the future. Pray for Audrey as she aims to find a balance between her calling to nursing and her call to be a stay-at-home mother for our children. Pray specifically that Audrey would stay healthy, as she had a very difficult time this past year with various health problems. And lastly, pray that above all else, we would put God first in our ministry, and that He would continue to show us the best way that we can be used to make an impact for Him in Rwanda. Thank you again for allowing me to come and share all of this with you, and thank you for the many of you who have already been partnering with us in one of the ways that I spoke of. God bless each of you.